And welcome back to another crossover episode. This is Locked On Chiefs, Locked On Raiders, talking to your boy Q, talking about this Raiders matchup with the Chiefs, Week 18. A lot to talk about in this game, and a lot on the line for Kansas City. Not so much on the line for the Raiders, but thank you, Chiefs Kingdom, and thank you, Raider Nation. Welcome back for another episode. Your daily podcast covering the Chiefs and the Raiders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for always making Locked On Chiefs and Locked On Raiders your first listen of the day. Don't forget we're free and available on all platforms, including YouTube as well. Crossover Thursday is presented by our friends over at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is so much fun and it's easy to play. No competing with other players, just you versus the projections available. Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their PrizePicks projections, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. It can literally take less than 60 seconds to enter. It's that easy. We love PrizePicks, and we know you will too. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's PrizePicks.com, promo code Locked On. All right, Q, a lot to talk about in this game. Maybe a little bit on the line for the Raiders with all the different players playing for jobs for next season.
Yeah.
What is the main story that you have going into this game?
Well, it's exciting, man. It's exciting to see what Jarrett Stidham looks like. Of course, Derek Carr was sat down previous to the Week 17 game against the 49ers at Allegiant Stadium, and Jarrett Stidham got his first career start, and he looked pretty good. He threw for over 350 yards and had 3 touchdowns in a loss, but pushed the 49ers to overtime, and this is the number 1 defense in the league. And, funny fact, the only 2 quarterbacks in the league in 2022 that threw for 3 touchdowns against the 49ers defense is Patrick Mahomes and Jarrett Stidham. So there's that. So not comparing Jarrett Stidham to Patrick Mahomes, but I thought that was a pretty good performance and shows that he understands Josh McDaniels' offense. He was with Josh in New England. They drafted him. There was conversation that he could be the heir apparent to Tom Brady. I never thought that was going to happen, but I did know him from high school at Stephenville High School in Texas. I knew him when he was at Baylor. He eventually transferred and went to Auburn, and he's in the league now. And he's been training to be a starting quarterback for a very long time. And this is a second opportunity for him to prove that he can be. So I think for the storyline for the Raiders for this game is who wants to be in Las Vegas in 2023, who's showing that they deserve a spot. And, there's going to be a quarterback conversation after the season's over. Who's going to be the starting quarterback in 2023? We know who it's not going to be, but who is it going to be? And Jarrett Stidham, he's trying to make a case for it being him, and this game could go a long way to do that. So I think that's probably the biggest storyline for the Silver and Black heading into Saturday's game. What about you?
Man, there's so much to talk about when it comes to the Chiefs, and I just want to throw this out there really quick before we get into the talking a little bit more. I apologize. I have a little bit of a cold and a cough, so if I cough, I do apologize. I'll try to mute myself, but I just want to give you all a heads up. I'm sorry about that. Honestly, this game, Kansas City has to win. They're playing for the number 1 seed. There's still a question as to whether or not they'll be the number 1 seed, and we do not know as of this recording. And obviously, it's secondary to everything else. Damar Hamlin, hope you're getting healthy. Hope that is going better. That's what really matters. But we don't know what's going to happen with the Bills and the Bengals game. If they call it as a no contest or a tie, if Kansas City wins this game, they're the number 1 seed because of win percentage. Yeah. If they reschedule it, maybe that's something that's going to be something else. I don't know what's going to happen there. But Kansas City has to win this game. That is the number 1 thing. That is the major story in this game is if they win, they have a chance to be the number 1 seed. And that is what they have to be playing for in this week.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting, and of course we know what happened with, the Bills and the Bengals on Monday Night Football and Damar Hamlin. And like you said, man, all prayers are up to him and his family, and hope that he comes out of this thing, sooner rather than later. But that's one of the interesting storylines. And I had someone tell me that that game on Monday night between the Bills and the Bengals was really the most important game for the Chiefs that didn't involve the Chiefs on the 22 season. So I thought that was kind of telling. And yeah, I mean, maybe if you're looking at a counter storyline for the Raiders, since this is such an important game for the Chiefs, maybe a little bit of motivation as they're about to clean out their lockers after the game is over. Maybe to try to play spoiler, right? I mean, I know the Chiefs are a very good team. We saw them all season long. We saw what they did week 5 against the Raiders. But maybe if the Silver and Black are looking for some kind of motivation, something to hang their hat on, like, hey, we can go out with a bang knowing we're not going to go to the playoffs. But if we can kind of, hurt our division rivals a little bit, maybe that gives them a little bit more juice at Allegiant Stadium, their home, on Saturday. So those are some good, interesting storylines. And of course, that Bills and Bengals game, depending on what happens, that's a big deal for Kansas City.
It's a huge deal, and like you said, like I said earlier, prayers to Damar Hamlin and his family. That is the most important thing. Hopefully, he gets better. You start looking at what else this could mean for Kansas City, and you said it yourself. Maybe the Raiders try to play spoiler, and that's a possibility in this game. The other thing that I have to wonder about, just from a league-wide perspective, is how does what happened on Monday Night Football, which was the last football game played, affect any games this weekend? What are you going to see different? How is that going to affect things? Because I do think it could play into how this game is going to play out.
I do too. I think that you're going to see guys decide that they don't want to play this week. And I'm not saying it's going to be Raiders. I'm not going to say it's going to be Chiefs, but I do feel like there's going to be some guys this weekend that are going to say, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. Right. I mean, especially guys that are playing and they really aren't playing for anything. And there's a handful of games that both teams really are playing for nothing except for pride and to finish off the season. And, you very easily could see somebody in the Raider locker room say, yeah, I'm not quite ready, because again, it was the last game that we saw, and the Raiders and Chiefs game will be the first game played since that game. So there could be some, hangover kind of effects. And obviously I don't mean hangover in a drunk sense, but I mean just hangover, like those feelings are still in these guys' minds. And, they got back to work on Wednesday, and that I can only imagine was tough. I know for the Raiders, as I was at the practice facility and, many media members were around the locker room, man, the guys weren't, energetic. They weren't pumped up. They were kind of not somber, but they were in their thoughts, man. They had to talk to a lot of counselors at the facility. They also, had to talk to the team doctor about, hey, this is what you saw, this is what happened, this is why it happened, to the best of their knowledge. So there's a lot of healing going on across the league, man, not just in Buffalo and Cincinnati, but across the whole NFL.
Yeah, and that's definitely going to play a part into how this game goes and really how the rest of the season goes for the NFL overall. And again, one more time, prayers to Damar Hamlin and his family. I really do hope that he gets better. And as of right now, we do not have any more information other than it sounds like he's getting better. So we have to hope and pray that continues. Well, when we get back, I want to talk a little bit about the matchups in this game that are going to make it fascinating, because I think that on both sides of the ball, there are going to be guys that are could make or break this game for either team. But I want to tell you first about our friends over at BetOnline.net. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting, news, info, stats, and analysis. You need to go check on BetOnline.net for any of your betting needs. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season to basketball and World Cup. We've got it all at betonline.net. If you love sports podcasts, you can even find those on at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Q. So let's talk about these matchups, because there are some matchups that are going to be something that we're going to really have to watch, especially with potentially a couple injuries on the Chiefs side that could make this game rather interesting as well.
Yeah, no, there is. There's some really interesting matchups in this. And, from the Raiders' perspective, what I want to see, because, look, Jarrett Stidham, as we had talked about him in great detail in segment number one, he did a hell of a job against the number one defense in the league in the 49ers on Sunday. So I want to see what it looks like, him going up against this Steve Spagnuolo-led defense that, does a lot of man coverage, right? And when you're in man coverage, a lot of times the corners and the guys in the secondary, they have their back to the quarterback. Well, the one thing that Jarrett Stidham has that Derek Carr didn't have was the willingness to get outside the pocket and run. The willingness to, hey, if it's not there, tuck it and go, right? That's what he did a lot of on Sunday against the 49ers. So I want to see how Steve Spagnuolo, defensive coordinator for the Chiefs, how he decides to play this defensive style against Jarrett Stidham and the Raiders. Because, again, he's not a Lamar Jackson guy where he's going to just run around the yard, pick up 100-plus yards, but he can – he can keep plays alive. And, he had a really nice touchdown pass to Davante Adams for 60 yards where he rolled out of the pocket but kept his eyes down the field and hit a strike to Adams, and he got a touchdown out of that. So there's things that you could do. As you very well know, Patrick Mahomes uses his legs all the time. If you have that ability, things open up. So I want to see how the Chiefs defend the Raiders and the weapons that they have, with Hunter Renfrow returning and Darren Waller looking healthy and Davante Adams and Josh Jacobs, assuming all those guys are out there on Saturday. I want to see how it looks with a guy that's mobile in the pocket and is willing to use his legs. So how do you think that Steve Spagnuolo deploys that defense for the Chiefs?
Well, that's my big question. And Stidham took a huge hit on that long touchdown pass
Yeah, he did.
to Devontae Adams. He stood in there, took a huge hit. He knew he was going to get clobbered, and he made the throw anyway. That's a great sign for him going forward as an NFL QB. My big question, and it plays right into what you just asked, is L'Jarius Sneed going to be available in this game?
Yeah.
He went back in the game against the Broncos, but he was limited. He didn't practice at all on Wednesday. No, on Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, he was limited in practice, and we're still waiting to find out what happens on Thursday. My days are a little bit off since it's a Saturday game. So the question is he even going to play? If he doesn't play, you're going out there with 3 rookie corners. How are you going to change things up? How are you going to attack a Raiders offense that has a lot of weapons? And the bigger issue that you have when you start playing guys like Jarrett Stidham and, Brock Purdy, for example, with the 49ers as well, you don't have a lot of tape on them. So
Right.
it's really hard to find tendencies and really hard to find different ways to attack. And I think that's going to be a huge key. What does Spagnuolo do to try to confuse Stidham this week? Because I do think that he's going to try to do things.
Right.
And how does he use all the rookie corners that they have? Because you're in a situation where, you have Devontae Adams, but you also have Hunter Renfrow, like you said. You have Darren Waller. You have Josh Jacobs. You have a lot of offensive weapons that Kansas City defense is going to have to try to figure out how to stop, and they may be without their best corner.
That's going to be really interesting. It really will. And you mentioned the 3 rookies out there. That's going to be a hell of a matchup. I mean, that's one that I hadn't really hadn't caught my attention. So I kind of have that circled now as a point of, okay, let me make sure I focus in on this as the game's unfolding just to see how it all shakes out. So that should be interesting. One area of concern that I always have when it comes to the Raiders defense is the middle of the defense. It always seems to be wide open. Patrick Mahomes is a guy that always seems to find all the holes in the Raiders defense and just kind of has his way with the Raiders. As far as offensively for Kansas City, how do you feel like they attack the Raiders defense, which is not very good?
Well, and you have a couple of guys that are going to be out too. Obviously, Chandler Jones isn't going to play. Denzel Perriman's out. So those are huge losses for your defense. Obviously, you still have Max Crosby, who I'm sorry, maybe he's not an all pro, but he's really close in my opinion. I think he's a fantastic defensive end. And when you look at what they're going to do on offense, I think that it's going to be intriguing to see what Kansas City does to change, because when they played the Raiders before, Tony wasn't in Kansas City. Now they're playing them with Tony, and it looks like maybe they're even going to get McCole Hardman back.
Yeah.
So now you have you have 2 guys that can stretch the field both horizontally and vertically to add into Travis Kelce and Juju Smith-Schuster and Noah Gray and Marquez Valdez-Scantling. How do you deal with all those weapons? How do you move things around? But the bigger key for me, honestly, is just trying to get McCole Hardman back in the offense. Try to get him on a few jets, not necessarily jet sweeps, but at least the jet motions. Use him in that regard. Maybe you get a couple balls out of coming out of the backfield, catching ball on the flat or something, to get him out in space and do a couple of things. Try to get him back into used to playing football. But I honestly do believe that Kansas City is going to be pretty vanilla in a lot of what they do in this game, because they know what they're playing for. Yes, they need to win this game. Yes, they want to be the number 1 seed, but they're playing for the playoffs and they're playing for a chance to go to the Super Bowl.
Right, absolutely. You mentioned Kadarius Toney, man. That was a name that intrigues me. The Chiefs picked him up from the Giants. How has he been? Obviously, in New York, he fell out of favor, got in the doghouse. But how has he been so far in Kansas City?
Overall, I think he's been really good. I think that it's going to be very curious to me. And to me, 2022 was always going to be a bonus. You're trading for Tony in 2023 in the future. I mean, that's really what
Right.
you're trading for. You're trading for next year. Anything that he can do this year is a bonus. And I think that what you've seen is his ability in space and his ability in his vision with the ball in his hands is close to second to none. I mean, he is fantastic when he gets the ball in space and he's able to set up blocks, and his moves, his agility, his ability to wiggle and get through defenders is fantastic. So it's going to be something fun to watch. He had a fumble on a punt return. Unfortunately, it's not the first time Kansas City's fumbled a punt return this year. So something to worry about a little bit, I guess. But overall, I think that he's been a great addition to the Chiefs. And he also gives you a different element that you don't have with McCole Hardman because of his shiftiness. Hardman is straight line speed. Tony has speed, but he also has the shiftiness, which is so huge.
There you go. Well, it should be interesting, man. I mean, I know Kansas City has plenty of weapons. The Raiders have plenty of weapons. I'm interested to see how both teams really, use those weapons on Saturday at Allegiant Stadium. It's so weird saying Saturday at Allegiant Stadium and knowing that, at least for the Raiders, it's a season closer, right? I mean, it ends out the regular season. They'll clean out their lockers. They'll have their exit interviews, and it'll be a done deal records, and it'll be off to the offseason where, as you mentioned, Kansas City will be going to the playoffs. So there you go, man. I feel like it's a really good way to end the regular season going up against a division rival in your house. I mean, last year at Allegiant Stadium, Week 18, it was the Chargers, and obviously the stakes were much greater because the Raiders and Chargers were both playing for a chance to go to the playoffs. This year, one team is definitely going to the playoffs, and the other one is definitely going home. But I mean, it's a division rival. Last game of the season, we really couldn't ask for too much more. So I'm excited about just seeing the game on Saturday.
And I'm really surprised that the NFL put it on Saturday, to be quite honest, because
Yeah.
you're sitting here looking at before we knew what it was going to happen with Bills Bengals, putting them on a different day than the Buffalo Bills just seemed a little bit different, and didn't seem like that should have been the case because they're both going to be vying for the number one spot. But it's a Saturday game, and maybe Kansas City gets an extra day's worth of rest going into the playoffs.
Yeah.
Who knows whether or not they'll end up getting the number one seed if they win. I think they have a pretty good chance, but we still don't know, like we talked earlier, what the Bills and Bengals game is going to do and if they're going to make that up and how they're going to do that. So lots of questions when it comes to that. When we get back, we're going to start getting into predictions for this game, what we think is going to happen on the field. But first, I want to tell you about our sponsors over at Built Bar. If you're looking for a delicious treat but don't want all the fat and calories, then you got to try a Built Bar. What makes Built Bars so good? Well, for starters, they're all covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. And they come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. I'm not sure how Built does it, but these bars taste like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros. And what's even better is that they are healthy. Only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you don't need to wait around to get a box. For years, we've been talking about ordering your Built Bars at Built.com. Now you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today, walk to the pharmacy section, and grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs. If you're close to a Sam's Club, run in and grab a 13-bar box with our hit flavors, brownie batter, and churro. You can thank me later.
Mhm.
All right. This is where, I'll be quite honest, I'm not even sure where I'm going to go with this prediction because one of the things that you talked about earlier that I don't think that we are put enough thought into going into this game is the energy that these teams are going to have.
Mm-hmm.
You've spent a lot of time in the Raiders locker room or you've spent a lot of time around the team.
Yeah.
That teams usually have a lot of energy in the locker room regardless. I mean, maybe not so much after losses, but just regardless, they usually have a lot of energy during the week. This week is going to be somber for just about every single team. How is that going to affect things going into this week? How is it going to affect the product on the field on Sunday? And honestly, I get it. I'm not trying to say that I don't think that it should. I understand why it will. But, man, I really don't know what to think on this game. Kansas City needs to win it because they want the number one seed, but there's
Right.
so many more things going into this game.
Right. And that's the thing about it. I think with the sense of urgency that the Chiefs have because it is so important, I think that they'll probably come in maybe with a little bit more energy than the Raiders do, at least initially. But then again, I mean, it's Kansas City. It's the Raiders, right? I mean, it's Chiefs week. It's Raiders week, whatever you want to call it. It's a division rival, right? The Raiders are hosting the Chiefs. And so they don't want the Chiefs to go into Allegiant Stadium and get embarrassed or embarrass them, I should say. So they're going to want to, go out on a high note. They know that their season's getting wrapped up. None of those guys want to lose. So I think that they'll do their best, but it's hard to understand what their best is going to look like, right? I mean, again, we haven't seen what happened on Monday. We haven't seen that in a very long time, at least when I've been watching football and covering football, I haven't seen it. I know there's stories of times when it's happened going back to 71 and other times. I get that, but I wasn't part of that. And these guys probably weren't either and didn't see it, obviously when it happened. These guys are young cats, man, so they didn't see it either. So I'm interested to see what they all, how it looks. And then on top of that, I mean, we're talking about Thursday. Who knows how things go on Friday? Who knows how things go right before kickoff? I mean, we don't know. By the time the Chiefs and Raiders take the field at Allegiant Stadium on Saturday, they still might be wondering what's going on with their fraternity brother that's in the hospital in Cincinnati. I mean, there could be no update on him. So that's something that could be like a heavy heart. And like I said, DJ Turner, the wide receiver from Pitt, he played with Hamlin. He's in the Raiders locker room. He's on the practice squad right now, but I mean, he's there. And so that's something that is emotional for him. So, there's a lot of different emotions that can go through it. I think Chris, once it gets kicked off, maybe the energy will finally kick in. The players will, just kind of boom, snap into it because it's back in their natural element. But I do think that there's going to be a little bit of a slow start probably for both teams as they try to get that juice flowing a little bit.
Yeah, and I could definitely see that. I think that it could go that direction. Mahomes talked on Wednesday and said, every time he comes off the field, he's trying to get to his phone to see if there's any updates on Hamlin. And obviously, when this game kicks off, we don't know whether or not there's going to be any big updates between now and then, and
Right.
and how that's going to affect things. And I really don't know what to expect in this game. I would love to say, when you look at it from a football perspective, which is about the only way we can really look at it right now. When you look at it from that perspective, I think Kansas City should win this game, and I think it should be maybe 31-21, 31-17, somewhere in there, and maybe it's even more high scoring than that. But I don't know what to think at this point.
Right. I mean, if everything was even and there was no issues going on, and obviously that'd be a perfect world, then I feel like it'd probably be a much closer game, especially since it's at Allegiant Stadium. But with everything going on, it really depends on what team comes out and what the mood is like. I mean, again, it's the first game played since the event that took place on Monday, and so again, that could be something that they got to get prepared for as well. So there's a lot that's riding on it, obviously for Kansas City, and there's some personal things that are riding on it for the Raiders. As far as like Josh Jacobs, he's leading the league in rushing right now, so it'd be nice to see him go out there and do well on the ground and kind of solidify that rushing title. He's about 200 yards ahead of Nick Chubb. That's something to pay attention to. Devontae Adams has a phenomenal first year with the Raiders, so he's putting up massive numbers and big time touchdowns. So that's something personal as well. But as far as like team goals, there's not a whole lot outside of what does Jarrett Stidham and the offense look like altogether. So at some point, man, we'll see what it looks like, and maybe it'll take a little while for them to get going. I want to say I expect the Chiefs to win the game. With it being at Allegiant Stadium, I think there'll be a little bit more juice, and the Raiders will really want to win it because it's at home. But I know how much is on the line for the Chiefs, and they really want that number one seed. So I lean towards Kansas City in this one for sure.
Yeah, and I can understand why you're saying the Raiders want to come out and they want to be spoilers, because that's what Kansas City would want to be if the situation was reversed. Obviously, you want to end your season on a high note and to ruin it for your division rival, and so that makes a lot of sense. And I can see the Raiders coming out with a lot of juice, and quite honestly, one of the bigger things that has been a storyline this entire second half of the season is Kansas City has found a way to win in situations where it didn't look like they should.
Right.
And multiple games this year, twice against Denver, against Houston, they looked like they should be playing down with the bottom of the barrel type teams in this league, and yet they still found a way to win. That's what's important this week. That's what they have to focus on, is they have to find a way to win. But the biggest thing that they have to do to be able to win in this game, don't turn the ball over. If they don't turn the ball over, I think that they're in pretty good shape, and I think Kansas City wins. Q, been a lot of fun. Really enjoyed this. Lots to talk about, and hopefully we get a good game on Saturday.
Yeah, exactly. That's all you can hope for. Hopefully, everyone is in their best when they leave the game as far as health goes. And again, as you mentioned at the start of the show, man, prayers up to Damar Hamlin and the families and everyone affected by what's going on with him as he's still laying in a Cincinnati hospital. But yeah, man, just hope that the game can be played at a high level and it's very entertaining. And everyone gets out of it what they need to get out of it. So, Chris, man, good luck in the playoffs, and we'll see how it all shakes out, man. It should be a fun playoff run for Kansas City and all the rest of the teams that are in the playoffs.
And that's going to be it for us today. Thank you all for listening. We really do appreciate it. We will be back tomorrow to give you our predictions right now beyond giving you our predictions for this game. And Q will be doing his thing as well, I'm sure, giving you a prediction for what the Raiders are going to do. Thanks again for listening, and we will be back tomorrow.